Shalom, shalom, everybody. Ariel Bar Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. Wait, did you hear that? There was a bump in the night. I wonder what it was, what it could be. Yes, we are not alone, are we? They are here. They are always here. Well, good that they're here, because they're here to learn with us a lesson in Torah. This is our Kabbalah 101 Plus series, what your other rabbis aren't going to teach you. Lesson number 10. And we're here going to talk about, werewolves, vampires, spirits, ghosts, and demons, and things that go bump in the night. And of course, based upon our social conditioning, whenever we speak about vampires, we have to speak with an imitation Eastern European, Romanian, Transylvanian accent, just like a Bela Lugosi. Now, there is so much to actually discuss with this topic. You're going to see, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this, because there's just so much to have fun with. Whereas at the same time, I'm going to tell you right now from the beginning, according to the Torah, are there such things as real vampires and werewolves and spirits and demons and ghosts? And the answer, emphatically. Notice I said that word emphatically? Okay. Yes. Yes to all the above. Yeah. Our sages, clearly, if you look throughout literature, which I chose, maybe by choice, not to elaborate all of the source material for this class, because it's available. You can do Google searches online and find the material. The teachings of Rabbi Ephraim and others about werewolves and some of the legends about vampires and the like. And I do not want to have an academic review of a rabbinic literature on supernatural entities. You know what? If that's really your slant of things, great. Go do Google search. You'll find all the different material on it. That's not what we're here to talk about now. I'm already beginning and putting out of the way that these things are real. But with that being said, we need to actually analyze, discuss what is the nature of their reality, and as such, once identified, well, what do we do about it? Now, you will notice, let's start with the topic of vampires, because that seems to be the most popular in modern genre. Just today, the Rabbanit and I went to Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I saw this right at the checkout. This is a Life magazine. It's all on vampires. Why is Life magazine having a big, thick episode, a magazine on vampires? Well, you know what the traditional vampire is. Here's a picture of Bela Lugosi. Here he is, seducing the woman, and he's going to suck her blood, blah. We used to make fun of that type of caricature, which at one time was taken seriously. How many of you remember the Munsters? There's Grandpa Munster, played by Al Lewis, if you might remember that. This was all taken, and Munsters, aren't they in syndication somewhere on one of the channels? I'm sure they are. They had characters on Sesame Street, vampires. Oh, and who can forget Count Chocula, the cereal which we grew up eating. And for a little bit more risque, how many of you remember Elvira? We better not put her picture up here. Remember, this is a kosher yeshiva. So, this is the fun of it. But then something changed. All of a sudden, TV shows, and more so in the movies, started to portray these entities as actual positive role models I forgot the name of the show. Here, this is the picture. I remember this. This is from the movies. Twilight's right there. That's how much I know about these things. And from what I understand, this is genre of a very popularization of vampire characters. You had, I remember a movie with Tom Cruise playing a vampire and others, and they're all portrayed as these sexually magnificent, powerful, virile males who, in a world today where men have been emasculated by all kinds of things and pushing social media, women who are, isolated and alone, they look up to this, believing that there's some type of power in this. And needless to say, all right, let's call like it is. You have a bunch of horny, boring, ugly old guys out there who probably couldn't find a girlfriend other than trying to masquerade as something stupid like a vampire, who take advantage of young, suggestive types, male and female, in all due respect, who will believe, wow, there's something here, when obviously the only thing that's there is a bunch of baloney. Now, Sierra is apparently drinking the blood of something. She's back there chewing on some kind of a bone. But anyway, getting back to the issue here. When we're going to talk about vampires, they are real. And no, they're not from Transylvania. And no, they don't speak with an accent like this. And they don't wear tuxedos. And they don't walk around with capes. And they don't talk around with, they don't turn into bats. And they're not these handsome, sexy, virile men. Yes. And all this other kind of nonsense. But yet, if you want to seduce, if you want to manipulate, and obviously you change the appearance into something more compatible, something more acceptable. Now, this type of experience, this type of, should I call it social manipulation of reinterpreting things? This is an old psychic tool. Before I even begin to address the issues of other entities indigenous to our earth, know and understand that there are higher dimensions than the one we live in now. And I've discussed this in my private classes and the like. Somebody's going to mention shape-shifting. Shape-shifting isn't what you think it is either. But let's get into it. There's a fourth dimension of space. Maybe this is what modern science has discovered and recognizes as what we now call the dark matter world. We know that only 4% of everything in the universe is all that we can see. And there's another 10-20% of this dark matter surrounding us. We have no idea what it is. That's why it's called dark. Not dark isn't bad or evil, but isn't unknown. And then surrounding that, something called dark or unknown energy. So about 96% of this reality that we know is there, we know nothing about. So these are higher dimensions in which everybody wants to make golems. All right, we're going to have to start a golem making company, so rent them out like maids. But anyway, getting serious again. The reality of higher dimensions is not something that anybody can deny for one reason. Every one of us has had experiences with this, most of us unknowingly. Now, I'll give you an example, a very pertinent example of psychic attack, psychic vampirism, and the like. There are many, many people who have suffered from terrible addictive or abusive addictions in their lives. Alcohol, drugs, and the like. And it's cost them dearly in life. And they have been out of control for maybe decades, years, who knows. Well, in this, you got to question, well, what's going on inside the individual? Is there a psychological component, post-traumatic stress, or something similar? It could be all of these things. but there's often a psychic tap, something from the higher dimension that's essentially feeding off the entity, feeding off the human being, preventing the human being from finding healing in what they need. And those who actually make the efforts to find healing, regardless, you don't necessarily need actual exorcisms and the like, but you're going through a process of internal transformation, which is what the exorcism procedure is really all about. So now, I'll give the example. Here's our vampire magazine. Again, I've done this many a time. Let's make believe that our world is a two-dimensional world, just like the top of this magazine. Okay? We can go backwards and forwards and side to side. Those are the only two dimensions that somebody living on the top of this magazine or that two-dimensional being would understand. Now, here's my hand. It's in three-dimensional space, but they don't have three-dimensional space down here, so they can't see my hand. They can't look up. There is no up for them. So when my hand comes from up here into their universe, they just see something appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And I can take my finger, let's say it's a little ant, and I go and squash it, or something similar. Well, this fourth dimension, which is surrounding us, Sierra. Oh, here she is. Sierra, you got to relax. You got to chill out. Yes, go talk to the vampires outside. Go find the vampires out there and bark at them. There you go. What else do you have dogs if not to chase away the vampires? I think she chases away the werewolves too. Or she might turn into one. You never know. But anyway, getting serious again. We know from science and we've known from experience throughout all of human history. Somebody says, bring her on camera. Sarah's not a camera doggy. Lavana is. She'll come jumping and knocking over the camera. Okay. This conversation's gone to the dogs. Woo! Let's get back to vampires before we get to the werewolves. Anyway, there are higher entities of all different kinds. Now, here is something that actually comes right out of the Bible that we never really pay attention to. According to Kabbalah, the domain directly... Banging things here. Sierra, sit down and behave yourself. Sit down. Sit down. Oy, difficult. No. Relax. Does she want to go out? She just wants to be obnoxious and bother? Typical. All right, go lie down. Stop it. No. Daddy's recording now. People are watching. Here, do you want to come on camera and say hello to everybody? Come. Say hello. Say, hello, I'm Sierra. I'm bothering Daddy. I want to be a werewolf. You want to be a vampire or you want to be a werewolf? All right, go lie down. Anyway, you always have to have a little, lightened up when you talk about these types of things, simply because our society is very Christian in its foundation. And therefore, the secular culture that developed came out of the Christian culture, in which in the subconscious, deep down, the archetypes of stuff, people really believe in this stuff. It's very deeply ingrained. When, what's his name? Bela Lugosi made the Dracula movie in the 30s, or the original Nosferatu back in the 20s, the silent one. That is when it was believed that vampires were real entities and people were terrified of them. So that's the truth. Later, again, we started to lighten up on these things and it became more benign. Sesame Street characters, the Munsters, Count Dracula cereal, and all of these similar type of things. Well, this lightened up the mentality because from a rationalist point of view, we never took this stuff seriously. But then that old archetype started to come back. When was it? In the 70s, was it? That they came out with the movie The Exorcist? Everybody was terrified by the Linda Blair, I believe was the actress, who portrayed the possessed young girl, and she was turning her head around, spitting out pea soup, and everybody was terrified of this. Except when the movie went to Israel, Israelis as Jews are not of that same mentality and mindset as the Christians of Europe and North America. When The Exorcist came to Israel, everybody, literally across the country, thought it was a comedy, thought it was a joke, and they were rolling in the aisles laughing when Linda Blair's spitting the pea soup and turning her head around and walking on the wall. Everybody thought that was hilarious, because there was nothing inside to attach to that reality. Now, the fourth dimension. What is really there? Like I said before, Sierra came and interrupted us. Even in the Bible, as a reference, in the Kabbalah, we speak of the higher dimension above us that's called Yetzirah. The Yetziratic realm is kind of like the realm of, for lack of a better way to describe it, higher dimensional animals. And one group of these higher dimension animals that our sages refer to are called mazikin, which means harmers. We refer to them as angels, but they're not really angels. They're not like, guys with wings. They're not demons, fallen angels out to turn your soul to hell or anything of the kind. These are natural, indigenous entities from a higher dimension that are, like I said, indigenous to our earth. And let's put it blunt, with something we don't like to hear. As rationalist and defiant and arrogant as we are not the highest on the food chain. There are other entities in these other dimensions that are higher than us. And they exist and live in their dimension and act accordingly. Just like in our reality, we eat meat. We gather together cows and sheep and goat, and we have slaughterhouses and the like. Now, if entities of the psychic nature were to do that to us, we would say that's evil. Have you ever asked a cow what they think of the slaughterhouse, in which by the thousands they're being brought in and mercilessly murdered and drained of their blood and their flesh eaten? If that's not a vampire, I don't know what is. So, maybe we are the vampires. And then maybe there are other entities that treat us in exactly the same way we treat cows. That is the reality of things. These are these entities called mazikin. The mazikin, they're like animals. What do we refer to animals in Hebrew? Hayot. Isn't Hayot also one of the names of the angels? But those are called Hayot HaKodesh. And what do the Hayot HaKodesh, where do we see them? Active and functional in the Merkava, which we know is some kind of a transportation device of some other type of being. So, entities of the higher domain, the mazikin, they feed off of what we would call psychic energy. Psychic energy is known by a million different names, not a million, but chi, ki, orgon, prana, all right? We call it nefesh, kundalini. It's all the same. It's in the blood. It's in sexual activity. It's generated by emotion. And they feed off of this. This is their food, just like we would eat the flesh. Now, very curious. You talk about these aliens, the little gray guys and the Shia guys. Well, they have so many different encounters with them. And in one of the, in quote, secret encounters recorded by our governments, which of course, wink, wink, doesn't exist, the entities, when asked, what do you eat? They claimed, well, like you humans, Well, we eat blood. We drink blood, but we don't eat the flesh. So we're like on a higher level. In other words, they just declared themselves to be vampires. And it's known that the little gray aliens, all right, they're not aliens, they're indigenous from here too, Nishaya. They're the mazikin. What do you know? And they're the ones who have the psychic ability. Look at all the UFO literature. They gaze into your eyes and make you have any image in your mind. And that is when, or I should say the cause of what people call shapeshifting. In ancient times, these entities would take the forms of beautiful women, handsome men, and people would interact with them. Shadim, they do the same thing. We already have many stories about them as well. But the mazikin are well known to corral human beings, isolate them individually, and feed off of them. That is what they do. And for them, it's not done in the name of evil or the devil or anything of the kind. Their attitude towards us, do they still do this today? Oh, absolutely. Like I said, a lot of people who suffer from isolation and addictive behaviors and the like, compulsive behaviors, you see it all the time. It's a sure thing that you got some kind of entity there. And no, it's not a possession in the same way as having a demon in you, but it is what we call a hashpa'ah. Where do they do this? Mostly in Washington, D.C., with lawyers. I don't think there's a person in Washington who's not succumbed to this, especially those of certain political parties. That we're not going to get into that conversation right now. But on a serious note, the reality of these mazikin are real. The sages write about this. Right in the Gemara, Masechet Barachot, Daf Hey, on the name of Ben Yamin. He says, thank God we don't have the eyes to see all the mazikin around us. We'd go nuts. They even tell you different types of formulas of how you can suspect their presence. Now, I'm going to tell you how these mazikin come. They're known by all kinds of different names. But these are the real vampires of whom we speak. And if you want your vampire to look like Bela Lugosi, or I don't know the name of this actor, this guy here, he's the vampire in Twilight, right? I think he's the new Batman coming out in the new series, right? Handsome, so sexy, so virile. It's a little gray guy standing like this, okay? He's got eyes and he's psychically projecting images into you. And this is the one, ladies and gentlemen, at night when you're saying, oh, I want to bond with an angel or a demon or a vampire, and you have this image and vision or a dream that this hot, sexy person of choice comes to you and you surrender. That's one of those little gray guys who's astral projecting into you and like a straw sucking out your energy. It is well known and documented that you can sense them, especially if you wake up in the middle of the night, you feel a pressure like somebody is sitting on your chest. Oh, they always come in the forms of beautiful men and women. Now they come in the form of extraterrestrials. All alien contact. Let me rephrase that. All alien abductions is all this kind of material. As we say in the words of wise King Solomon, En kol hadash tachat hashemesh, nothing new under the sun. They've been doing this since ancient days. And they were called in ancient days demonic abductions. And today we call it alien abductions. And Carl Jung was on top of this way back in 1960 when he wrote his book on UFOs and called it The Myth of the Modern Man. Because this is the form and structure that our minds take. And I'll tell you a little secret. I hope the vampires won't come for letting me reveal this to you. Our governments know this very well. They know it all. They've been dealing with this stuff for decades. And this is the reality both of alien abductions and the vampires. They are real. They are mazikin. They are not evil from their point of view, but only from ours. So, what do we do about it? Well, how about this? Practically and realistically speaking, Right? The Rabbanit knows that in our backyard, in our house, we have a family of possums. And they play possum. I remember, just to digress, we had the big possum out there. Sierra went running after the possum. The thing fell dead like this. I looked and says, oh my God, it's dead. Ellie thought, Rabbanit Ellie thought it was dead. And I said, nah, it's playing possum. I said, come back in 10 minutes, it'll be gone. And it was. Now, why do the possums come? Because we have a tradition in our family. We don't like to throw away, old food and stuff. We like to put it out for the animals. Guess what happens when we do that? The animals come. Somebody's saying vampire and aliens are mazikin. I didn't say aliens. Aliens are not mazikin. Aliens, they got real aliens out there from, doing their stuff. But no, I'm talking about those who come and masquerade as aliens. Now, with that being said, at a time when we wanted to make fun of the identity, we neutralized that form. So if you look at Count Chocula cereal, or a Sesame Street character, or all these other, even Elvira, right? This is all meant to make fun. This is not serious. So that neutralizes the imagery. But all of a sudden the imagery shifted and changed and became something else. And all of a sudden, by the millions, you've had people who want to have some kind of experience of this nature. I have heard so many times people say, I would love to have a succubus, hot, beautiful, sexy person of choice, come to me in the middle of the night and give me all my sexual pleasures. Well, remember, those sexual imageries in your mind are illusions, delusions, while your life force energy is being siphoned out of you. When you're 20, you might not feel it. But by the time you're 40, if you get that far, you're going to find all kinds of psychological and emotional and physical problems. And if you look at the nature of isolation, which is running as the real pandemic today, psychological isolation, this is the result. These entities look at the modern world today and they just suck off of it. Look at the Holocaust, the concentration camps. Hitler was an occultic master. He ran the furnaces in the concentration camps 24 hours a day. The Nazi Waffen SS were an occultic secret society. They were offering the souls of their victims, specifically to life force energy, to their entities, for purposes that have not yet, even after 75 years, become clear, but will in the future. Topic for another time. But the mazikin entities are drawn to an equal or a compatible energetic signature. And this is where our society has opened the floodgates to them. Energy that is out of balance, they come in through the, in quote, back door. So, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, there you go. Ever since the 60s, where you had the explosion of the counterculture, which broke down all the walls of psychic safety and security under the false narrative of being, we're free to do whatever we want. Okay, yeah, you're free to become a victim and pay the price of it. And people have been doing that for the last so many years. Look what's happened to society. Society's collapsing today because the entire energy that we need as a civilization is being siphoned out of us. It's like the legs are being, sucked out, and you go, and the whole thing falls. Now, I know somebody here in Texas is talking about sleep paralysis and the like. Sleep paralysis is positive and negative. It depends on where you go with it and what you do. I'm not going to get into that right now. But you will recognize a mazik attack, a real psychic vampire attack. Because again, they will portray themselves in your mind in accordance to the image that your mind experiences, which could be positive or negative. If you have sexual fantasies, this is why the rabbis were very against masturbation. Because when you're creating these sexual images in your mind and projecting them outward, then you're bringing back an equal and opposite. In essence, when you're being involved with pornography and masturbation, men and female both do this. Well, your thoughts are going out there, and they're saying, attention all, I'm looking for somebody. And somebody, something responds. And this leads to a tap. And that has to be broken. That's why we always speak in our Torah tradition about proper, balanced, monogamous, heterosexual relationship as such. That energy needs to be grounded. All right? Pattern of the Sephirot, pattern of the yin-yang, pattern, whatever patterns you want to look at, it's the patterns. So, nothing wrong with a responsible indulgences of the things of this world. However, when that indulgence goes beyond and or I should say takes control of you, well, that is where something comes in. Remember, nothing from outside can come into you unless you open the door for it. This is why, not only in our Torah tradition, but in every other moralistic tradition, we speak about basic foundations of morality, righteousness, self-control. Look, choose your religion, choose the spiritual path. You pretty much see they're all saying the same thing, because this is psychic protection. So here we are again in our two-dimensional world, and this entity is going to come down. Where is it going to go? It's going to go to where it's drawn. So if you're calling for it over here, it's going to say, I can grab it over here. But what about the guy over here? Well, he's not calling for anything, so there's nothing there for me to get. Somebody's asking, when is masturbation okay? Religiously speaking, I don't know any of the spiritual traditions that accept or tolerate it. How's that? I mean, what does that say? But our society today has become so grossly over-sexualized. And there's a price to pay for this. If you look today at the majority of women in Western civilization, they're really kind of angry at men. I don't blame them. Men act like pigs all the time. All that a man seems to be interested when he approaches a woman is sex. Oh, I'm not like that. You may or may not be like that, but everybody is. I mean, I can ask every woman in this audience right now, or those who can listen, have you ever had the attentions that you know the eye or something else from some guy is just not what it's supposed to be? I've even asked women in church, because in the church, Christian traditions, they hug all the time. And I asked, and I said, how many of you women have ever received a hug from a member of the opposite sex which you know wasn't so kosher? Every one of them said yes. This is a problem, because we have broken down the boundaries of safety. And there's a price to pay. I'm not talking morals and values. I'm not talking about God's judgment. Forget the religious stuff. I'm talking energy. Every culture, every psychic tradition. Go and talk to the Tibetan Buddhists. Talk to the shamans. Talk to the Sufi. And all of them. They're all going to tell you the same thing. It's a psychic energy. And when you can experience these things personally, you'll see it for yourself. Now, this is the issue. When the psychic vampires out there are interpreted to be positive, we open ourselves up to these things. When our society and civilization presents as positive these or those things which are open to us, we're open to psychic vampires, the real ones, not the phony balonies on the cover of Life magazine. And yeah, they are a danger, and yeah, they are real. Now, if a vampire, number one, they don't have the teeth, okay? When I see these people, I have teeth like a vampire, all right? You know what? When we were kids and we were children, yeah, of course we did that. The vampire, Count Chocula. But I see these adults. Yes, I want vampire teeth. What the Are you a moron? Are you an adult moron? What are you talking about? The next thing you're going to say, I want to put hair on my face and look like the werewolf. I said, some of these people are just idiots. I'm sorry, idiots. The Rabbanit laughs because of certain things. She's encountered people like this in Europe and here in America, and I mean, she shared with me some of the stories that she's known, and it boggles my mind. So, oh my God, how could people be like such morons to believe this stuff? I am in touch with the spirits of the vampire. I think you need to be in touch more so with a psychiatrist who could possibly make sure that you get the help you need, idiot. But people fall for this stuff, all right? You're not going to meet Elvira. She's not real. She's a character from television, right? Lighten up. Now, I think we've covered the issue of vampires. They are real. They're what we call in Hebrew, in our Kabbalah tradition, mazikin. Every culture knows this. And, hold on. Time out. Stop looking to the Romanian Vlad Dracul as, oh yes, he's the real Count Dracula. Oh, shut up. Vlad Dracul was a crazy guy. There's no doubt about that. But if you go to Romania today, he's considered a national hero because he prevented the Turkish Islamic invasion of Southern Europe. Now, was he a crazy guy? You know what? The Roman Emperor Caligula was a crazy guy too. Some of the leaders in ancient cultures, Mongolian, Chinese, even Native American, go look at the Aztecs and the Mayans. A lot of these guys are like really, yeah, they were all crazy guys. So don't go picking on poor old Vlad and thinking, oh yes, he's the real Count Dracula. All right, let's put the myths aside. Okay, you can't drive a stake in the heart, and the cross doesn't scare them off. A little anti-Semitism with that too. If you looked at the original Bela Lugosi version of Dracula, he had this medallion, and it was in the shape of a Jewish star. Don't think there wasn't a little subtle going on with that one. And of course, he was afraid of the sign of the cross. Again, Now, if you want to joke and take this stuff into a laughing matter, which it should be mocked. You could look at some of the Leslie Nielsen movies that were made in the 1990s. One of the ones, I think it was called Dead and Loving It, where he actually played Count Dracula. It's a very, very funny version of it with Mel Brooks. So you can imagine where that went. And then I think it was 95. He came out with Repossessed, which actually starred him and Linda Blair, who was the actual girl from The Exorcist. And they did a different take of the exorcism. And we've always had a joke that if and when you ever have a demon who comes to possess you, whoa, what do we do with them? Well, we put them on the treadmill and we exorcise them. And you know something? If you don't pay the bill, guess what happens? You know, because you have to pay the exorcist, right? You can get repossessed. You got to understand the reality from the falsehood. And as you know, our Jewish tradition is emphatically, and I emphasize that word emphatically, rationalistic. Maimonides, for example, didn't want to deal with the reality of any of these things. But our sages in the Gemara did. Other rabbis did as well. Don't turn to rationalist rabbis today and say, none of this is real. Because they're contradicting what everybody else in Judaism says. So yeah, especially those with us with experience with these things, we know and understand these things are real. Let's put the psychic vampires aside. Now let's talk about werewolves. All right? Now, I've seen some of the portrayals of the werewolf, and of course, Lon Chaney back in the 1940s. That was the best. I don't care what anybody says about these modern versions. All right? I used to date somebody who had hair on her face like that. You got to laugh at this stuff. Please, this is Hollywood. But it's been ingrained in our consciousness. And it's like brainwashed us to believe that this stuff is real. Are there such things as werewolves? How about weredogs? How about were anything? And the answer is yes. These things also are real. But what are they? Somebody's asking, real or psychic? Real is psychic, and psychic is real. So, do you look up at the moon and you want to turn into a wolf? One of my favorite movies, if you're an oldie but goodie like me, was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. All right, and it featured Bela Lugosi playing Dracula and Lon Chaney playing the werewolf, and it's a hilarious film if you're of the genre my age that you would enjoy such things. Well, there was a line in it that I always thought was very funny. Lon Chaney, of course, who played the original werewolf, turns to, Costello, and he goes, tonight's going to be a full moon. And when the moon comes out, I'm going to turn into a wolf. And Costello looks at him and says, yeah, you and all the other guys in New York and Brooklyn. Wolf is the guy who goes chasing women. He goes, no, I mean a real wolf. So anyway, let's shift here. Mazikin do not shape-shift. That's not their, if you will, modus operandi. But others do. It is very possible in what we call astral projection, that when you're in an astral form, that you can materialize as any kind of constructed form, Sefer Yetzirah stuff, for that time period. Somebody's asking a question about centaurs here. Go into the Hesed Avraham of Rabbi Avraham Azulai, section 2, chapter 4, and it'll tell you centaurs are real too. And no, they're not projected psychic entities. They're physical. They live in inner earth. All right? So, real shapeshifting is an astral projection. Many different cultures have known and understood projecting the astral body, in which it can take many different forms. And it will and can congeal in this physical form. Here, think of it again. Here's our dimension. Let's make believe you are an entity in this dimension. And you just discovered there is a third dimension. You can actually go up here. Wow, how cool. And now that I'm up here, I can go back down in any form that I want. And that's how they work. So, you can see that there are individuals who have this ability and do so with glee and joy. Not necessarily for the sake of harming others, but for the sake of experiencing nature. Now, I live here, as you know, in southern Tennessee. We used to live in Tellico Plains. Our new property is right not too far from our old property. And I have one of our long supporting students from Coker Creek, which is a very, very old neighborhood, in southern Tennessee here, which since, I don't know, maybe the 1600s, has had a tradition of practicing witchcraft. The old mountain people. Well known, well documented. Everybody knows it. Everybody keeps their distance because these guys are real. They're not modern day weirdo Wiccans from, rejects from Woodstock kind of real people. The mountain women. All right. If you're from the Appalachia area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These people know stuff. They astral project all the time. He was driving home from work one day, and he called me up. He says, Rabbi, I saw something run across the road, and it wasn't anything like I've ever seen before. He says, could it have been a werewolf? And I said, it's very possible. You know the neighborhood. Things like this can and do happen. Now, if you get bit by a vampire, you're not going to become a vampire. You don't put stakes in the heart. That's all Hollywood nonsense. If a werewolf scratches you, all right, you don't get lycanthrophobia. Lycanthrophobia really is a psychiatric condition. And we actually have a biblical example of this. You know what I'm talking about? King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Read in the book of Daniel. It said that he lost the mind of a man, and he would like go out and howl at the moon. He became a psychological or psychiatric werewolf. No, he didn't grow hair on his face and fangs and looked up at the moon, Lon Chaney style. Please, Hollywood. But he did lose his mind. The Watchers can do this. When the Watchers want to punish an evil human being, they just let nature take its course and let the entities come in and siphon off the energy. And they can literally block you off from your human mind, and you become depraved like an animal. And there are many examples of this in mental institutions around the world, pretty much throughout history. People literally going howling, and no psychiatric medications ever been able to help them. Something psychic to this. So these were entities. Back in Skinwalker Day, when I went out to Skinwalker Ranch, they believed that they saw a major wolf, and they shot it multiple times, and nothing happened. They thought it was a Wendigo, not a Winnebago, a Wendigo. When it was a Winnebago, it would be really big. Those are the big vans. But anyway, they thought it was a Wendigo. I think it's a Wendigo. And an entity, a projection, a psychic astral projection from a Native American. Well, it's not what it was out there, and that's a topic for another time. You go on to the show, Skinwalker Ranch, when I went out there, and we chatted what was out there. So that's another topic for another time. Werewolves are out there. They're not prowling the streets. They're not going to get you. So if you're out walking in the middle of the moonlight and you hear, oh, it's most likely a coyote, a dog, or a wolf. But I don't think it's the werewolf coming to get you, especially in a Transylvanian accent. And he's not going to look like Lon Chaney or any of these other guys. But it very well could be some type of an astral entity who projects itself. Now, what about any kind of actual violence? Physical violence, hurting, killing people. In astral form, those who know what they're doing can materialize into a form, an animalistic form, which can then indeed inflict physical harm on human beings and, kill them. That can happen. And what can I say? The only thing that we really need to concern ourselves with is how we can protect ourselves from this. Somebody in text is asking about Yetis and Bigfoot. Well, they're probably inner earth entities, just like described in Hesed Lavraham. So no, they're not projected or anything else. And probably the Loch Ness Monster is probably some kind of entity from reptilian entity from there. And good old, what was his name? Up in Lake Champlain. I forgot that they got one of them up there too. Champ? Is that what his name was, if I remember? Yeah, I'm sure all those things are real. So what? All right, so we found the dinosaur. Mazel tov. All right, big deal. Go into the Congo. Go into the Amazon. You find a lot of weird stuff. Go into inner earth. Ooh. But anyway, let's continue in the time we have left to talk about ghosts, spirits, and of course, demons. First of all, let's take the demons and put them in a category. It is the Christian teaching that these are fallen angels whose job and role it is to hurt and harm mankind in a fight with God. This does not have its origins in Torah. This is not to be found in the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible. This has its foundation in Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, which then developed, grew and augmented in Greco-Roman traditions and was adopted into Christianity, and a good part of it later into Islam, in which there's the duality. The entity who we call the Satan, he's God's man. He works for God. He does what God tells him to do. Job, chapter 1, read. Now, Shadim are a natural indigenous race of entities on this earth. There are good ones and there are bad ones. And our brothers and sisters in Islam understand this a lot better than we do in the Western world. So you can go into the Quran and read the surah on the jinn. And there are good jinn and there are bad jinn. And the Zohar speaks about this as well. You have jinn, demons, who actually believe in God, are God, they worship God, they fear God, they're moral within the context of their species. They're not fallen evil angels who are going to go to hell. That entire concept and construct is foreign to us. The whole concept of an eternal hell, an eternal heaven, and a concept of damnation or need for salvation is a foreign concept to Judaism. So when Christian missionaries come to us and say, you need to be saved. Saved from what? Saved from disconnection from God. I'm not disconnected from God. Right? You're going to go to hell. I know all Jews go to hell. Christians have been telling us for thousands of years. We are all Jews, all Muslims, we're all going to hell. Yeah, we already know. Thank you very much. Okay? But that's not what it's taught. Not worried about that. No concern whatsoever. But with regards to the Shadim, many people don't really bother with Shadim, but are bothering with what we call ruchot, or spirits, nature spirits. These again are an indigenous race, very similar to mazikin in one way, and the Shadim in another way. They exist in this higher dimensional plane, and they reside in locations, lakes and mountains, and they have their own places where they live. And guess what their food is? Like the mazikin, it is life force energy. And human beings will often go to these entities and say, you know what, could you do me a favor? Can you imagine if your goat or your cow came to and asked you for a favor? What can I do for you? All right, could you put me in a better pen or something like that? Well, these entities look and say, all right, feed me. And that is where all kinds of human sacrifice came from. If you remember way back in the Bible, they would take the children and offer it to Molech, all right, in the valley of this guy named Hinnom, and his valley was called in Hebrew Gay Hinnom, and that's the word to this day which we use to describe the hellfires in the afterlife, which are an archetypal construct of the mind. You believe you're going to Gehinnom, you're going to end up there. All depends on your energy. So, the Ruchot are nature spirits. They're all over the place. Somebody's talking about what happened in Lake Baikal with the Russian seals. Those were indigenous entities of this earth. That was their home. They were doing that, and the Russian seals didn't belong there. And they paid the price, if you know the story. But we know that story. And we've developed technologies now that when many of these entities interact with us, we fight back. All right? A little secret most people don't know is that, the big, alien ship that crashed in Roswell. Well, no one's going to tell you this, but I'll tell you from sources that, of course, I can't reveal. We shot it down, just to let you know. But that's beside the point. Anyway, so yeah, these guys are real. Interdimensional. Nature spirits are out there. They're all over. You speak to them. I've actually encountered and interacted with them myself. So, you're crazy. Of course I'm crazy. I'm the craziest of all. I admit it. But I don't care. I know my own personal experiences, and I know what I've encountered. I know others also do. That's fine. All of this we're going to tie up with a nice little bow at the end. Now, the one thing we can talk about next is the debunk. Ghosts. There is a residual psychic energy pattern of every human life that lasts after the death of the body. We call this the nefesh consciousness. All right? This is not the neshama which goes off and reincarnates. So, for example, when we read the story in the Bible, Book of Shmuel, of the witch of Endor, in which King Saul is going to go to war and he finds a witch who calls up Samuel. Samuel is busy in heaven. Do you think all of a sudden he got a call on his psychic cell phone, spiritual cell phone? There's a call from the witch of Endor. She wants you to go and speak to Saul. Oh, okay. and he's up in heaven with Moshe Rabbeinu and all the rest. Guys, I'll be right back. No. This is why psychics, like you read about the mediums, they can sense the presence of a residual nefesh energy, which remember, like what do they call it? The Akashic record, just all like a computer, all the memories, impressions, and feelings and thoughts of every entity that's ever lived, every human's ever lived, and those who are sensitive can tap into this. I hear often about people who have had encounters. Recently, I was speaking to a very rationalist, down-to-earth medical professional who said that, he had encounters somehow, somewhere, somebody met their grandfather, described all these things. Yeah, those things happen all the time. It's not weird, and it's not abnormal. In all due respect, if you look at the actual statistics, almost, majority of people on Earth have had experiences of this nature somehow or not. It's the majority. So that makes it not abnormal, but rather normal. It's the prejudice of our rationalist intellect, which tries to deny the existence of these other realities, that's technically abnormal. When a human soul leaves the body, many a time it does not want to pass on into the light. Many times it's tapped into by these mazikin, and the mazikin force it to stay, and they still siphon off of it. The entities, the souls, are really in pain and suffering, and they are attached to certain types of lifestyles that they want to continue outside or after the body, we call after death. So, many of you might remember a movie from the 90s, a beautiful movie, Patrick Swayze. What was it called? Ghost. He gets killed, and he stays behind to save his girlfriend from a plot. And there's a story, he's traveling on a subway in New York City, and he meets another ghost. And the other ghost says, oh, you were dead. And the ghost says, oh, if only I could smoke a cigarette again. Oh, I love the cigarette. Well, that's the kind of way these Debukim work. And they will find a sympathetic energy signature in an individual and attach to the individual, kind of like a mazik, and compel the individual to smoke a cigarette, engage in promiscuity, engage in drug use or something, so they could feel it through the person. And they hide inside the person's psychic energy, because there is a civil service, if you will, divine spiritual civil service, whose job it is to corral souls and move them on. And they go running from them, kind of like the psychic police, if you will. Rabbi Yehuda Fatia in his Minchat Yehuda writes a lot about this. And our job, when we deal with real entities of this kind, isn't to go back to hell, kind of stuff like in the movie Possessed, exorcisms. It's not like that. We have to heal these souls. There's suffering and pain in the afterlife, just like there were in this life. And that's why a real exorcism requires healing the soul of the possessed soul that's there. And it's a big, long job. So this is the reality of the higher dimensions in which we live and the entities that are there. Yeah, there are real vampires, and we open ourselves up to them. So if you're the moronic type that you want to hang around with Dracula capes and put on fangs and look like an idiot, you know what? The real mazikin probably have such a grasp on those idiots that they don't even know it. All right? I would think that the majority of guys who would do something as infantile and juvenile as that probably do that because they have no other luck with the girls. They have to have some kind of angle. Oh, yes, I'm a vampire. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, okay. Fat, ugly balls. But anyway, sorry. Werewolves, you don't mess with people who have psychic abilities. All right? You just keep your distance. But now, as I said, we're going to tie it all up with a little bow at the end. I'm going to share with you something. Way back when I wrote my first work on UFOs and aliens in light of Kabbalah and Torah, I wrote that in 1993 as part of our Panu Derech journals. Some of you have been with me for long enough, you might remember those. Well, I remember reading one of the UFO magazines at the time, how to stop a negative alien abduction. Well, what do? I always thought that aliens, I know what aliens look like. I've seen, Klingons in Star Trek. They come beaming in, they got their phaser guns, and, you got to fight them off. Well, according to this article, what is the successful way? So I see somebody in text already beat me to it. The successful way of stopping a negative alien encounter. And according to the article, the most successful tested way was the recitation of Psalms, holy names, the presence and calling upon God. And I said, wait a second, how does that stop a Klingon phaser? Right? If the Navy SEALs came barging into here, and they got all their guns pointed at me, and I go to them, in the name of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. All of a sudden, they, like the Wicked Witch of the West in the Wizard of Oz, they throw holy water on them. Ah, melting! Ah! Really? Gee whiz, don't tell that to any criminal element. If they think they can get away with stuff, throw water at the cops. No, obviously, that doesn't happen. Not in the physical world. But if prayer and holiness rejects and puts up a psychic wall against these entities, using the wise words of the Gemara, I'll teach you, salka datach. Salka datach is Aramaic. It means you've revealed your position, like exposing your hand in a poker game, right? Salka datach. If you're afraid of and you're repelled by Psalms or the mention of God's name and the holy names, we already know who you are then. Thank you very much. So if these little grays are coming through your wall at night, we're going to take you to our spaceship and do sexual experiments on you. Oh yeah, cool. I'm going to meet one of those blonde Pleiadian hot babes. Yeah, okay. That's like one of these little gray mazikin putting thoughts into your head so that they can siphon your energy without you resisting too much. This is where you got to, literally, you quote Psalms, you quote the name of Hashem. We use the name Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke, the name that God revealed in the Torah. And this has power. And this is the power that can protect you from these mazikin entities, these psychic vampires, or anything of that nature. So, whether we're dealing with real ghosts or real spirits and the like, this is why we refer to Kiddusha, holiness. Holiness is not a behavior. It's an energy signature. Righteousness is behavior. Holiness is an energy signature. It requires certain levels of sexual balance, keeping purity within the body, kosher laws and the like. It's an energy realignment. And those who achieve Kiddusha are not projecting the energy signature that these other entities are attracted to. In such, they are repelled by them. So this is why we always refer to, and why the Torah teaches us, Kiddushim Tihiyu, be holy before God. And holiness, look, read Leviticus, read what Rashi says. Sexual balance and alignment, proper eating and dietary habits, why we don't eat blood or any of the other byproducts, which again, challenge and compromise psychic energy. Now, for those of you who are not of the Jewish practice, you can say, oh, I'm not Jewish, I don't care. Oh, you don't have to care about anything. But if you wish to align energetically in this, these practices need to be performed by you as well. And if you look at similar meditative practices around the world that seek this type of energetic alignment, they kind of all teach the same thing. No, not within the context of a religion, but within the context of energetic alignment, balance, harmony. There are real mazikin entities out there. They look at us like cattle, and they're gonna look for ones to feed on, and you are either going to be food in the food chain, or you're not. And therefore, your energy signature is what's going to define who and what you are. So yeah, all these things are real, not within the context of fake and phony Hollywood and nonsense and silliness, but within the sense of the psychic, energetic realities of our experience of beings. And I'm going to bet you every one of you listening in today, live, recording, or otherwise, I'll bet you each of us has had at least one experience in our lives where you know what I'm saying is true. Yep, you know it. You don't need me to convince you because you know what your personal experiences have been. Now, I don't need to know them. Don't put them here in text or anything of the kind. But just know and understand that, does this go up? Yeah, it does. Oh, I missed all these things. This didn't scroll up. Oh my goodness, I got all these things in text that didn't scroll up, so I couldn't see them. So sorry. But anyway, so this is what we got to address and understand. And if you could take this stuff seriously, I don't necessarily make this as a pitch for religion, but I do make this a pitch for you to recognize your own energetic signatures and to deal with it accordingly. And just to conclude, when you see these morons and idiots out there, this one claiming he's a wolf, a werewolf, or this one's a vampire, you know what? Just laugh at them. They're fools. I have power. Yeah, so do I. Yeah, you want to try my power? You want to duke it out in the psychic realm? Oh, baby, I love a fight. All right? I'm crazy. I'm definitely crazy in that respect. I'll throw every Shem Kadosh at you and everything else. I'll tear you apart. I'll show you what a real psychic werewolf can be like. Ow! There you go. Don't freak out, please. Anyway, on a serious note, go watch some of the Leslie Nielsen movies about the things like this. Laugh at it. Because those who want to take this stuff in that form seriously, like Hollywood presents it, please dismiss it from your mind, because that is how you help break its power in your subconscious. And if you can do that, then Baruch Hashem. Alrighty, guys, that's pretty much what we needed to discuss tonight. Stay away from all of this narishkeit, as they call it in Yiddish, this nonsense. Don't ascribe to it any validity. Recognize the psychic element of this and just deal with that accordingly. You know, that's why, morals and values and stuff like that. Just keep aligned with God and whatever your concept and tradition is. And that really, just be a decent, good human being. Take care of your doggies. And don't be afraid that in the full moon they're going to turn into werewolves. All right? Hasn't happened to Sierra yet. Nobody she eats, you never know. But, okay. We can joke. We can have a good time about this stuff. But don't allow yourself to be freaked out. Don't psych yourself out. Yeah, we all have dreams and you all have stuff. Focus on God, whatever your culture and tradition is. Bring holiness into your life. Separate from all of this secular garbage and nonsense, which is going to distract and poison your soul. All right? It's really that simple. I'm giving you the solution to all these problems, because you're going to talk to people and you're going to find out people don't listen to this. Everybody's got something. Everybody's got a story. All right? So keep that in mind. And Bezat Hashem, God be willing, we'll pick up in some stuff next week. Hopefully we'll keep your interest. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Ariel Bar Tzadok, KosherTorah School, found online, www.KosherTorah.com. If you like our videos, hey, please send us a little token gift from our PayPal account. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. We'd like to give to you. Please give back. Talk to you all soon. God bless. Shalom.